My sister got the call on a Tuesday morning. By the time she reached the hospital, I had already been unconscious for 6 hours. I didn't know that part until later. I didn't know a lot of things until later. What I do know is that I woke up in a room that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air, with an IV in my left arm and a blood pressure cuff that kept tightening every 20 minutes whether I was ready for it or not. The fluorescent light above me buzzed at a frequency that made my teeth hurt. A nurse I never caught her name actually. She had a small maple leaf pin on her badge, and she moved like someone who had seen everything twice. She told me I had collapsed in the parking garage of my office building in downtown Calgary. A security guard had found me. He had called 911. He had stayed with me until the paramedics arrived. I don't know his name either. I wish I did. My mother got the call at 7:15 in the morning. She was at the hospital by 9:40. That part matters. Remember it. My name is Tessa. I'm 31 years old. For the past 6 years, I've worked as a financial analyst at a mid-sized energy consulting firm in Calgary. The kind of job that sounds impressive at Christmas dinners and absolutely grinds you down from the inside. The hours were brutal, the expectations were worse, and I loved it anyway. Or at least I told myself I did. I was good at it. I made good money. I had a 1-bedroom apartment in Beltline, a used Subaru, and a savings account I kept adding to every month like it was a religion. I also had a family that treated that savings account like a shared resource. It started small. It always does, right? A couple $100s here and there when my parents were between paychecks. My dad worked in oil and gas, contract work, unpredictable, and my mom did part-time bookkeeping for a local clinic. They weren't irresponsible people. They just had never quite figured out how to live within the range of what they actually earned. My sister Brooke didn't help. Brooke was 2 years younger than me, beautiful in the effortless way that gets noticed in rooms, and had decided by age 22 that a conventional job was beneath her. She did some photography, some social media work, some vague brand consulting that I never fully understood. She made almost nothing. She needed almost everything. And somehow, over the years, I'd become the one who filled the gap. I want to be careful here because I know how these stories sound. I know the comments. I have seen enough Reddit threads to know that people will read this and think, well, you let it happen. And maybe that's true. But when you grow up in a house where asking for help is shameless and giving it is expected, when your parents tell you from the time you're a teenager that you're the responsible one, the capable one, the one who is going to go somewhere, it becomes a kind of identity. I wasn't worse, he handled things. Asking me for money wasn't a big deal because I was Tessa. Tessa could handle it. So I handled it. By the time I was 28, I was sending my parents $800 a month to help with their mortgage. This was presented to me as temporary. It was not temporary. It ran for 3 years. On top of that, when Brooke decided she wanted to move into a nicer apartment in Kensington, I co-signed her lease because her income didn't qualify. When she couldn't make her first month's rent, I covered it. When she needed a new laptop for her business, I bought it. When her car needed new tires in February, and if you've lived through a Calgary February, you know that's not optional, I paid for those too. I am not listing these things to be a martyr. I am listing them so you understand what the baseline was. So you understand what normal looked like in my family. Normal looked like Tessa paying. The collapse didn't come out of nowhere. I can see that now. I had been running a deficit, not a financial one, but a physical one, for about 18 months. I was working 60-hour weeks because we were in the middle of a major client audit. I was skipping lunches, eating dinner at my desk, sleeping 5 hours on a good night. My doctor had flagged my blood pressure at my last checkup. I had nodded, said I would manage my stress better, and then driven directly back to the office. The morning it happened, I had been at work since 6 a.m. I remember walking to my car in the parkade around 8:30 p.m., thinking I should eat something, thinking I was almost at the end of this crunch period, thinking just a few more weeks. And then I woke up in the hospital. The security guard. I later found out his name was Carl. He left a note at the nurse's station, had seen me go down on the camera feed and run over. My blood pressure had spiked to a level that the attending physician described as not compatible with continuing your current lifestyle. There was talk of a minor cardiac event. There was talk of keeping me for observation. There was talk about what happens to 31-year-old women whose bodies finally say enough. My mother sat beside my bed that first morning and held my hand. She cried. I believed her tears completely. I had no reason not to. My dad came that afternoon. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that wasn't just the drive. He squeezed my shoulder and said, "You need to slow down, Tess." I told him I knew. We didn't say much else. Brooke came that evening with flowers from the superstore, yellow tulips in a plastic sleeve, and she hugged me for a long time and said she had been so scared. I believe that too. For those first 2 days, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Taken care of. On the third day, Brooke told me about the trip. She had been planning a bachelorette weekend in Banff with her friends. 4 days at a hotel, spa packages, the whole thing. It had been booked for months. It was this coming Friday. She was so sorry about the timing, she said, but the deposit was non-refundable, and all her friends had already taken time off work, and it would only be 4 days, and I was stable now. The doctors had said stable. I said that was fine. What else would I say? Then my mother mentioned, very gently, very carefully, that she and my dad had also made plans to drive up to Banff that weekend to visit my aunt and uncle. They had been planning it for a while too. It was my aunt's birthday. The hotel was already booked. I looked at her. "I'll be alone?" I asked. "You're stable, honey. The nurses are there. You have your phone. It's only 4 days." 4 days in a hospital room while being monitored for a possible cardiac event. Alone. My father looked at the floor. I want to be fair to him. I think he was uncomfortable. I think there was a part of him that knew. But he didn't say anything, and sometimes that is its own kind of answer. I said, "Okay." I said, "Have fun." I said, "Give my aunt my love." They left Friday morning. I watched my mother's number disappear from my recent calls as the hours passed and she stopped checking in. By Saturday, I had stopped expecting her to call. The weekend nurses were kind. One of them, an older woman from Lethbridge who was working a double shift, brought me an extra blanket on the Saturday night because the ward was cold and I hadn't complained. But she had noticed. Small mercies. They accumulate when everything else is stripped away. On Sunday, something unexpected happened. The ward clerk, young, a little flustered, clearly dealing with a busy shift, came by my room and mentioned that there had been some paperwork confusion. My provincial health card had been flagged because my address hadn't been updated when I moved apartments 2 years ago. It wasn't a billing issue exactly. This is Canada, it doesn't work like that. But there was some additional documentation needed for a specialist referral, and whoever was listed as my emergency contact had been unreachable, and could I possibly call someone to come in and help sort it out? My emergency contact was my mother. She had not answered a single call since Friday afternoon. I called my dad. Voicemail. I called Brooke. Voicemail. I ended up sorting it out myself, from my hospital bed, on the phone with Alberta Health Services, for 45 minutes, with an IV still in my arm. The ward clerk apologized twice. I told her it wasn't her fault. It wasn't. After she left, I sat in the quiet in my room for a long time. There was a window. I could see the tops of some spruce trees, and a gray November sky. I thought about the $800 I'd been sending home every month for 3 years. I thought about Brooke's lease. I thought about the tires. I thought about what it meant that my own family couldn't be reached when I was in the hospital, because they were in Banff, at a spa, while I sorted out my own emergency paperwork alone. I thought, when does it become enough? My mother arrived back on Tuesday morning. She came into my room with a bag of Tim Hortons, a large double-double, and a bagel, which she knew I liked. And she looked tan and rested, and she smiled at me like nothing had happened. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Better," I said, because I was. Physically, I was better. She sat down and started telling me about the trip, the drive through the mountains, the spa. A funny thing that had happened at dinner on Saturday night. She laughed at her own story. I watched her laugh. And then she mentioned transitioning smoothly, like it was just another item on the agenda. That Brooke's Banff trip had been so beautiful, it had gotten Brooke thinking about a destination bachelorette in Vancouver Island next year, and that the hotel packages for something like that could run quite expensive, and they were all wondering if... "No," I said. She blinked. "No," I said again. "I'm not paying for Brooke's bachelorette. I'm not paying for any more trips. I'm not sending the $800 anymore after this month. I need to take care of myself." My mother's expression did something complicated. It moved through surprise and then into something that looked almost like anger. But she caught it, smoothed it back down. She said she understood, of course. I had just been through a lot. I should rest. She didn't bring it up again that visit, but I noticed she left within 20 minutes. I was discharged on Thursday. A colleague from work picked me up, a woman I had only known for about a year, but who had texted every single day I was admitted and shown up with a bag of groceries to my apartment door 2 hours after I got home. My family sent a group text that said, "So glad you're home," with a balloon emoji. The next few weeks were quiet. I was on modified work duties. I slept. I cooked actual meals. I stopped sending the $800. My mother called once to check in, talked for 12 minutes, and mentioned 3 times in different ways that the mortgage was getting tight. I listened. I said I was sorry to hear that. I did not offer to help. Brooke texted asking if I was doing okay, and then, in the same message, asked if I could just help with one thing. Just this once, there was a brand deal she was trying to land, and she needed a new camera lens. It was only $340. I read the message. I put my phone down. I did not respond for 4 days. When I finally did, I said I wasn't in a position to help right now, and I hoped the brand deal worked out. She didn't respond to that at all. My dad called on a Sunday afternoon just to talk. That surprised me. We talked for almost an hour about his work, about hockey, about a book he was reading. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't bring up money. At the end of the call, he said, "I'm glad you're okay, Tess. I should have stayed." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "Yeah, Dad, you should have." He said he knew. We left it there. I think about that call a lot. About 3 weeks after I was discharged, I went back to the hospital. Not as a patient, I needed to pick up some paperwork for my cardiologist referral, and I had a small thing I wanted to do. I had found out, through the ward clerk who had been so apologetic, that the visitor log for my stay was something I could request a copy of for my own records. I want to be honest, I didn't expect it to tell me anything surprising. I thought it would confirm what I already knew, that my family had come the first 2 days and then left, that I had been alone Thursday through Monday, a paper record of something I had already lived. I picked up the printout at the nursing station. I sat in a chair in the hallway and I read it. My family's visits were there. My mother, my father, Brooke, all clustered in those first 2 days, and then nothing from Friday to Monday, exactly as I knew. But there was something else. There were 3 other entries, each logged on different days during my stay. Thursday evening, Saturday afternoon, Sunday evening. The same name each time, a name I did not recognize. A man's name. I read it 3 times. I looked at the timestamps. Thursday at 6:47 p.m., Saturday at 2:15 p.m., Sunday at 7:30 p.m. While my family was in Banff, someone had come to see me 3 times and had been turned away each time as a Banff. Someone had come to see me 3 times and had been turned away each time because I had only authorized my immediate family. I went back to the nursing station. The ward clerk from before wasn't there, but I asked the nurse on duty if she knew anything about this visitor. She checked her notes and told me that yes, this person had come to the desk on Thursday, said he was a family friend, had been politely told that visitation was restricted. He had come again Saturday. He had been turned away again. He had left a card on Sunday when he came the 3rd time. She had put it somewhere. She looked. She found it. It was a plain white business card, a name, a phone number, and below the number, in small handwriting, "I'm sorry I can't explain in a card. Please call if you want to know. You don't owe me anything." I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for a long time. The name on the card was not a name I knew, but there was something about the handwriting, deliberate, slightly formal, that made me feel strangely calm rather than panicked. Whoever this person was, he had come back 3 times. He had been turned away 3 times. He had been turned away 3 times. He had been still left a card. That is not what strangers do. I called my mother that night. I told her I had picked up my visitor log and there was a name I didn't recognize. I read the name to her over the phone. There was a silence that lasted long enough that I pulled the phone away from my ear to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then she said very quietly, "Where did you get that name?" "From the hospital," I said. "He came to see me 3 times. Who is he?" Another silence, and then she said, "I think we need to talk in person." I drove to my parents' house the next morning. My dad was there too. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table I had done homework at for 18 years, and my mother told me something she had not told me in 31 years. The man on the card was my biological father. My parents had separated briefly when my mother was 24. It was before they were married, early in their relationship, and they had broken up for about 8 months. During those 8 months, my mother had met someone else. His name was the name on the card. They had dated for a few months. She had gotten pregnant. By the time she found out, she and my dad had reconciled. They got engaged. She told him about the pregnancy. He said it didn't matter. He would raise the child as his own. He had. He had done it without qualification, without conditions. I want to be very clear about that, my dad. The man I had called dad for 31 years chose me. That is not nothing. That is everything, actually. But she had never told me. She had never told me because she was afraid of what it would change. She had told herself it didn't change anything practical, that the man on the card had moved on and built his own life, that opening that door would only cause disruption and pain. She had told herself this for 31 years, and she had believed it, or at least she had kept believing it long enough that stopping felt impossible. I asked if he had known about me. She said, yes. I asked if he had tried to be in my life. She looked at the table. She said he had reached out twice, when I was a baby and then again when I was about 4. She'd asked him not to. He had respected that. I asked why he was at the hospital. She said she didn't know. She said she hadn't told him. She said she didn't know how he'd found out. I drove home. I sat in my apartment for the rest of the day and did not answer my phone. The next morning, I called the number on the card. He picked up on the second ring. His name was Gerald. He was 63 years old. He lived in Victoria now, but he had grown up in Calgary. He still had people here. An old friend who happened to work in a building near mine, who had recognized my name in a local business article and had mentioned it to him. When he heard I'd been hospitalized, he had driven from Victoria to Calgary, 14 hours. He said he wasn't looking to disrupt anything. He said he had respected my mother's wishes for 31 years, and he would respect mine too if I told him to go away. He said he had just needed to know I was okay. He said he had thought about me at every graduation, every major milestone he couldn't attend, every year that passed where he didn't know if I was well. I asked him why he hadn't fought harder. When I was a baby, when I was 4. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because she asked him not to, and he had believed that maybe it was better for me. That 2 homes and a complicated situation might have made my childhood harder. He said he wasn't sure he had been right. He said he had wondered about that for 30 years. I didn't know what to feel. I still don't entirely. Anger. Yes, at my mother for keeping this from me. At the years of not knowing. But also something else, something harder to name. Something that felt a little like relief. Like a gap I hadn't known was there, suddenly having a shape. We talked for 2 hours that first call. Then we talked again the following weekend, and the one after that. I want to tell you what happened with my family, because it didn't end with a dramatic confrontation, and I think that's important to say. I had a long conversation with my mother. It was not clean or neat. She cried. I cried too, once, briefly, and then I stopped because I didn't have the energy for it. I told her that I understood she had made decisions she thought were right, but that I deserved to have known the truth about my own life. I told her that the way she had treated the hospital situation, leaving me alone, being unreachable, had made me see clearly, maybe for the first time, how the dynamic in our family worked. I was useful when I was giving. I was manageable when I was sick. She said she was sorry. I believe she meant it. I also believe that sorry without change is just a word, and I have learned to watch for the difference. The $800 didn't come back. I held that line, and I have held it. My parents remortgaged at a lower rate, which they probably should have done years ago, and they are managing. My mother calls every couple of weeks. We are civil. We are careful with each other. That is what we have right now, and I am not closing the door, but I am also not propping it open. Brooke and I don't talk much. She found a partner who seems to be doing well financially, and the dynamic has shifted accordingly. I wish her well. I mean that without irony. My dad, my real dad, the one who chose me, took me for coffee about a month after everything came out. He said he had always meant to tell me himself one day. He said he had never found the right moment, and then the moments had run out. He said he hoped it didn't change how I felt about him. I told him it didn't, because it doesn't. Biology is not the whole of fatherhood. I know that now better than ever. Gerald and I have had dinner twice. Once when he came back to Calgary in the spring, once when I went to Victoria for a long weekend in June. He's quiet, a bit formal at first, and then unexpectedly funny. He has a daughter from a later marriage, my half-sister, technically, who is 24 and apparently wants to meet me, though we haven't gotten there yet. He has a garden with tomatoes and a very opinionated cat. He is, so far, exactly what he presented himself to be on the phone. A man trying to do right by something he got wrong a long time ago. I am not naive. I know this is only the beginning of something long and probably complicated. I know that building a relationship at 31 with a biological parent you never knew is not like finding a missing puzzle piece that slots perfectly into place. It is more like finding a whole other puzzle you didn't know existed and deciding if you want to start putting it together. I'm deciding yes. Carl, the security guard, got a thank you card from me last November. I found him through the building management office, and I wrote him a note that probably embarrassed him. He wrote back and said he was just doing his job. I told him it was more than that. It was. I am sleeping 8 hours now. My blood pressure's normal. I cook dinner most nights. I have started running again, just short loops around the reservoir near my apartment. Nothing heroic, but mine. My colleague, the one who picked me up from the hospital and brought the groceries, has become one of my closest friends. We get dim sum on Sunday sometimes. Last month, a younger analyst at my firm came to me looking exhausted and overwhelmed, the exact way I used to look, and she mentioned in passing that she had been covering for a family situation and it was catching up with her. I took her for coffee. I told her that her body will keep score even when your brain won't. I told her that the word no is a complete sentence. I told her that finding out who actually shows up when you are in a hospital bed is one of the most clarifying experiences of your life. And you do not have to wait until you collapse in a parking garage to start asking who those people are. She listened. I hope she heard it. I hope you do too. I keep thinking about Carl, a security guard doing a routine shift, watching a dozen camera feeds at once, who happened to look at the right screen at the right moment. He didn't know me. He had no me. He had no obligation to run. He ran anyway. And then he left a note at the nurse's station with his name on it. Not because anyone would know if he hadn't, but because that's just who he was. I think about that a lot when I think about how the rest of this story unfolded, because there's a version of it where nothing gets uncovered, where I go home, stay quiet, keep sending the $800, keep co-signing things and covering things and telling myself that this is just what family looks like. A lot of people live that version their whole lives. I almost did. What changed wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was a hospital bed and a visitor log and the very quiet realization that the people who showed up for me really showed up, without being asked, without anything to gain, were not the people I had organized my entire financial life around protecting. That's the thing about consequences. They don't always arrive loudly. Sometimes they arrive as a printout from a nursing station. Sometimes they arrive as a business card with small, careful handwriting that says, "You don't owe me anything." Gerald drove 14 hours because he had spent 31 years making a choice he wasn't sure was right. And when he heard I was in the hospital, he decided he wasn't going to make the same choice again. That's not nothing. That took something, a kind of moral reckoning that most people avoid because it's easier not to look directly at the things you got wrong. I had to do my own version of that reckoning, looking at 6 years of bank transfers and asking myself honestly, was I giving out of love? Or was I giving because I had been taught that love and money were the same thing in our family, and that stopping the money meant losing the love? That's not a comfortable question. The answer was uncomfortable too. What I understand now is that real integrity, the kind that holds up when nobody's watching and nothing's in it for you, doesn't shout. Carl didn't make a speech. Gerald didn't demand anything. My colleague didn't post about bringing me groceries. They just did the thing, quietly, because it was the right thing. That's what I'd been mistaking for normal for years, without recognizing it, because the people around me had been so loud about what they deserved that I'd forgotten to notice how little they actually gave. The hardest part wasn't cutting off the money. The hardest part was deciding that I was worth the fight, that my health, my savings, my future, my sleep, these were not negotiable resources to be distributed according to whoever asked first. That took longer to learn than I want to admit, but I learned it. I'm still learning it, honestly. Some days I catch myself calculating how much easier things would be if I just helped with one thing. Just this once. And then I remember the hospital room. I remember sorting out my own paperwork with an IV in my arm while my family took photos in Banff. I remember the security guard who ran. I hope you have a Carl in your life. And I hope, if you're the kind of person who has been carrying everyone else's weight for a long time, that you find the courage to put some of it down. Not because those people don't matter, but because you do too.